Rick Warren was a well-known figure admired by millions worldwide. His books had become bestsellers. His speeches had inspired countless lives, and his influence stretched far beyond just words. He was seen as a true role model. People respected him not just for his wisdom, but for his unwavering positivity, kindness, and ability to uplift those around him. But sometimes life takes an unexpected turn. Just when everything seems to be going perfectly, a single piece of news can shake everything to its core. And that's exactly what was about to happen to Rick Warren. A piece of news so shocking, so devastating, that it wouldn't just affect his career. It could impact his entire personal life as well. What he didn't know was that in just a few hours, he would be facing one of the biggest crises of his life. That morning started just like any other. Rick followed his usual routine, waking up early, spending some quiet moments in meditation, and then sitting down with his team to discuss upcoming projects. Everything felt normal, predictable, until the phone rang. At first, he picked it up casually, expecting just another business call. But the moment he heard the voice on the other end, his expression changed. There was tension in the caller's voice, a nervousness that made Rick sit up straight. Without wasting a second, he asked, "Is everything okay?" The next few words hit him like a punch to the gut. "Rick, there's a new story coming out about you, and it could destroy your reputation." If it were anyone else, they might have brushed it off as a joke. But Rick Warren knew this was no joke. Something big was about to unfold. Something that wasn't just a rumor, but a storm heading straight for him. Rick Warren's grip on his phone tightened. For a brief moment, he felt like the world around him had gone silent. His heart pounded in his chest as he tried to process the words he had just heard. A new story that could destroy his reputation. His voice was steady, but there was an undeniable urgency when he spoke. "What are you talking about? What news?" The voice on the other end hesitated for a moment, as if choosing the right words carefully, and then finally the truth came out. "Someone is accusing you of something serious, Rick. The story is going live in a few hours." Rick felt a chill run down his spine. He had spent years building his legacy, writing books, helping people, spreading messages of hope and faith. He had always stayed away from controversy, never giving the media a reason to drag his name through the mud. But now someone was trying to bring him down. His mind raced. Who could be behind this? Was this a misunderstanding, a false accusation, or worse, was someone deliberately setting him up? What exactly are they saying? Rick asked, his voice firm but controlled. The caller sighed. "I don't know all the details yet, but from what I've heard, it's bad, and once it's out there, people are going to believe it whether it's true or not." Rick leaned back in his chair, rubbing his forehead. He knew how the world worked. Scandals spread like wildfire. People didn't wait for facts. They reacted to headlines, to gossip, to the loudest voices in the room. A million questions flooded his mind. Who was behind this? Why now? What would happen if people believed the story? One thing was clear. He had little time to figure it out. The storm was coming, and he had to be ready. Rick Warren put his phone down, but his hands were trembling. His mind was racing, trying to grasp the weight of what had just been said to him. A scandal, a major accusation, and the worst part, it was going public soon. He took a deep breath, but it did little to calm the storm inside him. 1,000 thoughts flooded his mind. How would his family react, his followers, his team? Everything he had built over the years, his reputation, his work, his message, was now at risk. For a moment, he closed his eyes and tried to think rationally. Stay calm. Think clearly. But no matter how hard he tried, the anxiety kept creeping in. He had always believed in truth, in integrity, in standing firm through life's trials. But what if the world didn't care about the truth? What if, by the time he got a chance to defend himself, the damage had already been done? He grabbed his phone again and immediately called his team. Within minutes, his closest advisors were on a video call. Their faces mirrored his concern. "We need to get ahead of this," one of them said, their voice firm but urgent. "If we wait too long, people will believe whatever they see first." Another team member sighed, shaking their head. "It's already spreading, Rick. I just checked online. There are posts about it. People are asking questions." Rick felt the sharp pain in his chest. It had already begun. The whispers, the doubts, the judgment. It was already taking shape, and he hadn't even had a chance to speak yet. "What's our move?" someone asked. "Do we respond now or wait until we know the full story?" Rick didn't answer right away. He wasn't just fighting accusations. He was fighting time. If he spoke too soon, without all the facts, it could backfire. If he waited too long, it might be too late. His mind was at war with itself. This wasn't just a new story. This was an attack on everything he stood for. And for the first time in a long time, Rick Warren didn't know what to do. The next few hours felt like a nightmare unfolding in real time. Rick Warren's name was everywhere. News websites, social media, discussion forums, headlines flashed across screens, each one more dramatic than the last. Shocking allegations against Rick Warren. Unbelievable scandal. Is this the end? At first, Rick had hoped people would wait for the truth, but that wasn't how the world worked. Online opinions spread like wildfire. Some were outraged, some were confused, and others, people he had never even met, were acting as if they knew everything about his life. I never expected this from him. Is this true? I hope not, but you never know. Typical. They all end up like this. Even worse, the media wasn't waiting for facts. News anchors debated his character. Journalists dug through his past, and so-called insiders claimed to have exclusive information. Rick sat in his office, watching everything unfold on his screen. His phone buzzed with endless messages. Some from friends showing support, others from reporters demanding a statement. And then the real damage began. People who had once supported him started distancing themselves. Organizations hesitated to associate with him. Speaking engagements were quietly postponed. Sponsors who once saw him as a symbol of integrity were now questioning their partnerships. Rick clenched his fists. It didn't even matter if the accusations were false. The court of public opinion had already started its trial. He exhaled deeply and turned to his team. We can't just sit here. If we stay silent, people will assume the worst. His team nodded, but no one had an easy answer. Should he make a public statement? Should he wait for the truth to come out? Or would speaking out just add fuel to the fire? The storm had arrived, and Rick Warren was standing in the middle of it. Rick Warren knew one thing for certain. Silence was no longer an option. For the past few hours, he had watched the world tear apart his reputation without knowing the full truth. He had seen his name trend for all the wrong reasons, heard the whispers of doubt even from people who once called him a friend. But he also knew the power of words. If used wisely, they could turn the tide. He took a deep breath and leaned forward, his hands clasped together as he spoke to his team. We need to set the record straight. Not with anger, not with panic, but with truth. His media advisor nodded. A written statement won't be enough. People need to see you. They need to hear you. Rick agreed. A video message, not a polished, scripted PR stunt, but an honest, direct message from him to the world. Within minutes, the cameras were set up. No flashy backgrounds, no corporate branding, just Rick sitting in his office, looking straight into the camera. He took a moment before he spoke. This wasn't just about defending himself. It was about reminding people of who he truly was. Then, with a calm but steady voice, he began. Many of you have seen the headlines. I know you have questions, and I won't hide from them. But before you believe everything you hear, I ask you to listen, to really listen. He didn't deny the situation. He didn't lash out. Instead, he addressed the facts, the misunderstandings, and the truth behind the accusations. I have always believed in honesty and integrity, in standing for what's right, even when it's hard, and today I choose to stand in front of you, not as someone who is perfect, but as someone who is real. His voice was steady, but there was emotion in his eyes. He wasn't just fighting for his name. He was fighting for the trust of the people who had believed in him. As the recording ended, his team uploaded the video across all platforms. Now, all he could do was wait. Would the world listen? Would the truth be enough? Or was it already too late? The video was live. Now all Rick Warren could do was wait. Within minutes, the internet exploded. At first, there was silence, a brief pause before the storm resumed. Then, the comments started rolling in. Some people stood by him. Rick has always been a man of integrity. I believe him. It takes courage to face the world like this. Respect. We shouldn't judge until we know the full story. But others weren't convinced. Too little, too late. Sounds rehearsed. I don't buy it. He's just trying to save himself. The media wasn't done either. News outlets dissected every word of his statement. Some praised his honesty, while others called it damage control. Analysts debated whether he was telling the full truth. Rick sat in his office, watching the reactions unfold. He had done what he could, but was it enough? Then, something unexpected happened. A few key figures, respected leaders, friends, even people who didn't always agree with him, began speaking up. They defended him, urging people to wait for facts. The shift was subtle, but Rick could feel it. Doubt was creeping into the narrative, but this time, in his favor. But the battle wasn't over yet. The accusations were still out there. The truth still needed to come out, and Rick Warren knew his fight had only just begun. Rick Warren had faced storms before, but this was different. This wasn't just criticism. It was an attack on everything he had built. For days, he had watched the world argue over his character. Some believed him, others doubted him, but no one really knew the truth. Until now. Late one evening, Rick's phone rang. It was his legal team. Their voices were sharp, urgent. "Rick, we found something. You need to see this." Within minutes, he was on a video call. His lawyer pulled up a document, followed by a series of messages. Proof. The entire accusation had been orchestrated. A smear campaign. Someone had deliberately spread false information, manipulating the media, twisting half-truths into something much darker. Rick's heart pounded. This wasn't just an attack. It was a setup. "Who's behind this?" he asked, his voice steady but cold. His team hesitated. Then they revealed the name, a former associate, someone who had once been close to Rick, but had grown resentful over the years. Rick leaned back, exhaling slowly. So this was personal. But knowing the truth wasn't enough. He needed the world to see it. His team worked fast. Documents were compiled, evidence verified. They had everything they needed to expose the lie. Rick took a deep breath. The storm had pushed him to the edge, but now it was his turn to fight back. Tomorrow, the world would know the truth.